Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of AgogeTV with me, your host, Phil Leonard.
And I'm your host, Josh Summersgill.
On today's podcast, we have our resident doc, Paul McLindon. As always at LST, everyone's got a nickname, and Big Mac is no different. At 6 foot tall and 110 kilograms, he's one of our resident rig shakers and has the ability to send it after a hard day's work, which is one thing we're going to discuss today. So, Big Mac, first things first, how did you find LST? How did you come across us, and what keeps you ticking over with us?
Good question, yeah. So actually, probably one of the more embarrassing responses to the questions at the moment in time is it was my sister that I found LST through. Obviously, Katie, who's now no longer a member due to work and so on and so forth. But I'd obviously been up in Edinburgh for a couple of years of work, which I'm sure is something that you might want to.
I thought Katie wasn't a member anymore because she got a boyfriend.
Well, it takes one half, who knows. But I'd also been up in Edinburgh and I'd done it for about 6 months with a CrossFit box up there after meeting a lad called Jamie Stein, who I've played rugby with, and he owns a box called CrossFit MTS, Mission Training Station, which is in flat bang in the middle of Edinburgh. Right. Tiny little box in comparison to ours, but very similar sort of ethos and mentality and that community spirit. And that was actually my first ever exposure to CrossFit. Obviously, I was very much standard, one of those lads from way back when it first came about, used to snuff it quite a lot, and due to my other sort of rugby experience, blah, 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 which again, I'm sure we'll come on to in a bit. Yeah. Wanted to continue with fitness when I first started work whilst I was up there. Started playing rugby, met Jamie. Jamie said, come on down, see what it's like. Started going to it, fell absolutely in love with it whilst I was there. Did it for about 6 months before moving back down home. When I came back, Katie was already a member. She sort of said, come along. So I can't remember who it was. I think it was yourself, Phil, that she probably spoke to. Dropped us a message. So then came down to the box. The first few sessions there, I think you sort of pretty much just said, look, have you done this before? Yeah. Covered a couple of movements down, threw me in at the deep end, and it was just sort of cling on for the rest of the time since then, trying not to drown.
To be fair, I remember your first session because normally when someone says to me, so if I say, oh, have you done CrossFit before? And they go, yeah, a little bit. Normally that means no. So when you're like, yeah, a little bit, I'm like, right, all right, ring dips, get it, bro. It's just like, and I was like, and I was pleasantly surprised to find out that you had actually done it before and you could do most of the movements.
Yeah, it got worse since then, though, unfortunately. Don't know why.
No. Awesome. So obviously I found us for your sister. You've been training up in Scotland. You mentioned it as well. You played the softer version of rugby at a high level. Yeah, so that's rugby union for anybody that doesn't know.
I don't like football.
I
don't like rugby anyway. I like football, so I can do what I want.
I could play in goal. That would be about it. Cause I'd still most of the goals.
I feel like you'd make a great centre back. You and Wardy could clash like big heads.
I reckon I'd just piss Wardy off if I was playing centre back next to him. I'd just get spun in circles by people going around me, and he gets really angry.
I feel like everybody pisses Wardy off. It's fine.
Anyway, yeah, back to your question. So I was a professional rugby union player. Basically, my granddad, my mum's dad, was a professional. Well, I say professional. It was about the time that things were just starting to get paid in sport. But he'd left the army and was a professional heavyweight boxer and playing rugby league for what are now called Bradford Bulls, but it was Bradford Northern back then because that's where my family are from. Yeah. So he spent his week sort of Monday to Friday working as an electrician. Then on the weekend he would go and play rugby league for Bradford Northern. Then on the night time he would be boxing. Well, my granddad played sport, yeah. The nice little anecdote about that was that the day that he proposed to my grandma to get married, she obviously said yes, and the entire family came along, and he had a game for Bradford Northern. He used to be on the wing. And he was chasing after a fella to tackle him, sort of dove to do an ankle tap, and the fella's boot came up and hit him in the mouth, and then my granddad sort of just stood up and spat all his teeth out in front of my grandma and all of her family on the day that they just got engaged. But but that was that. Anyway, my mum and dad moved down here. Mum used to be a PE teacher. Dad's obviously a doctor. Dad used to play football because he's a nonce. And mum basically, Granddad used to come over all the time to see us, and like from being a young age, like I was a little brute. I looked like the kid that ate the Milky Bar kid when I was younger. Nothing's changed since. And Granddad was just basically like, throw him into any sport that you can get him to do when he was younger, but don't play rugby league, which is bizarre, obviously, for the region that we live in, because he felt that there was more money to be made in rugby union. And that's the way that he used to see things. So I got into that at the age of like 5. Used to play, went through all the county standards back when they used to do Mersey, North Lancs, Greater Manchester, it's like the filter feed, and so back then, you were playing like 3 games a week on top of training, because you'd be playing for school, you'd be playing for your club, and then you'd be playing for like your region. Following that, all the trials, it then went into Lancashire, so I got picked for Lancashire. But the amount of politics that was within that is just beyond belief. And I at the time had moved to Liverpool College, which is just on Penny Lane, which is meant to be a rugby school, but it's really not. And it was one of the schools that, therefore, they didn't really pick players from. So for me to get picked was actually quite a big thing, because it used to be all like the grammar schools and the boarding schools that would be getting picked because of the politics behind rugby union.
Yeah.
So I got into Lancashire and was going through the ranks from that, and basically then got picked for North of England. And at the age of about 14, 15, Dale Sharp from Manchester came knocking on the door. And we're just like, look, we think you've got potential. Do you want to come along to one of the academy training weeks that we have in the summer holidays? So I was like, yeah, fantastic. Went along to that and just performed really well, because just threw myself in at the deep end. Before I went, sort of had a chat with my granddad about it. And granddad was very much like, this is the shot. It could be from this either nothing or a full-time contract, and you've just got to take it as that. There's no middle ground. That you can't just go and have an all right week or an okay day with a couple of bad ones. You've got to go in and put it in 100% for the entire week. And we went up to this place called Catterick Garrison, which is up by Newcastle, I think it is, which is an army base where they do like tank driving and blah blah blah.
Yeah. I've actually ran 10 miles around that with a like.
Have you?
Yeah.
that place is miserable. They did the first thing they did when we got there was like a fitness session ran by the army that were there, and it was just carrying logs as teams of 10. And like by the time you got back, your shoulders were battered, and it was as soon as you got back onto the training pitch, you were straight into a contact session. Just like, it's any wonder that I'm broken, because we were doing this at the age of 14, 15. So anyway, yeah, that week went well. At the end of the week, the academy manager, a guy called Phil Leck, came along and just like, look, we'd like to offer you a contract into the scholarship system that we're running, which was run in conjunction with England. So at the time, England Rugby Union had this sort of scheme going through where they were giving each Premiership club 250 grand a year to basically bolster their academy to try and get more English talent through to get the England team to where it is today. It's where a lot of the likes of Maro Itoje, Owen Farrell, all those lads have come through that. It was called the ACE team, ASSE. I don't know what it stands for. Yeah. But I was one of those. So at the age of 15, 16, got picked up for that. And GCSEs and stuff just went by the wayside. I just ignored it. It was like, that was it. I'm going to be the next Johnny Wilkinson. Who gives a shit? I don't need to learn. Books mean nothing. So,
I'm not convinced you ever played 10. I'm not.
I swear down I played 10. I might have been the fastest 10 out there, but I played 10.
I don't know what that means.
Go on, Big Man. I'll let you explain.
I can't even, to be completely honest.
Getting it to position.
Yeah. So
essentially, the joke of a 10 in rugby union is it's a pretty boy that does the passing and the kicking.
Yeah.
Now you can tell from this that I'm not the pretty boy. So I was a bit different. My face didn't fit, believe it or not. So from the GCSEs. Loads of arguments with mum and dad about that, because my mentality at that time was, I'm going to be a professional rugby union player. I don't need to do this. It's not something that is going to benefit me in the future. But thankfully, in hindsight, both mum and dad managed to argue enough with me that it was like, right, okay, well, yeah, but how long is your career as a professional rugby player going to last you? You know, you're going to have to do something at the other end of that to pay the bills. So I did okay at GCSEs. I wouldn't say it was amazing. I did okay. And then I went off to a place called Mayerscough College, which is up in Preston. And that was basically like the breeding ground, so to speak, for Sales Academy. So they sent all their kids up there, and it was basically you did like a sports science degree as opposed to doing A-levels. And it just meant that they had full control of everything that you were doing. Nutrition, gym, training, what your sleeping habit was, what your education was, where you would be playing, like everything was just controlled by them. But for me, that's when rugby actually started taking a bit of a negative turn. So I'd always seen it as something that I was excited to do. Like it was never a hardship. It was always something that was enjoyable. But at that time, because every section of your life was broken down into literally minutes and seconds, and what have you done that has then affected the game in either a positive or a negative way? How do you then get better? What are you going to spend the next week doing in order to get better for the next game? You did nothing but analyse your entire life. So it completely sucked the enjoyment out of the sport for me. And it became very much a burden in my life. If I was having a bad day or you'd had a bad play, you know, you'd knocked on, you'd caused, for example, for me, it came around to my very first game for the academy at the age of 15, 16, I think it was. And we were playing against, I think it was Leicester Tigers at Catterick, which is Sales training ground in Manchester, just by the Trafford Centre. And I got on for the last 15 minutes, and our team had given away a series of penalties back to back, and the referee had warned the team before I got on the pitch. The next one is a yellow card, really, you know, repeated offences.
So you got off. Is that what
yeah. Within 2 minutes of being on the pitch on my debut, I got a yellow card and was off for the rest of the game. And what's even worse about it was I gave the penalty away about 10 yards out from our line, and they ended up scoring from it and ended up taking the lead. So it was a real kick in the teeth. That first video analysis session the week after, everyone was like,
fuck. You're sat there.
Back then I wasn't even big. I was a skinny little runt, so I couldn't even. I just had to sort of sit there, the back of my head down.
Wow.
But yeah, so essentially went through that. Sort of, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Repeated injuries. At the age of 16, got told I was going to be the starting 10 for England under 16s in what they do like a mock version of the Six Nations, and it occurs about the same time as the open age group does.
Yeah.
So I was excited for that. You know, it was a big thing. It was going to be my benchmark to pushing on to hopefully getting a full-time professional contract as opposed to being on a senior academy contract at that time. And was playing a game for my local club Widnes over at Heaton Moor in Manchester, just because I've been released to be able to get a bit of game time on the run up to it all. And I went on this break, went to sidestep somebody and just buckled, just hit the floor like a sack of spuds. No idea why, but just couldn't get back up again. And it just in seething pain, and I'd completely torn my anterior cruciate, the left knee. So I went to see a chap called Steve Montgomery in Aintree, who has very kindly operated on it using the patella tendon graft, so screws and so on and so forth. I was out for 14 months. That was a season and a bit gone for me, which meant that the England stuff completely by the wayside, and I didn't get a sniff back again after that, really. By the age of 18, 19, I decided really that my body, after repeated injuries, posterior cruciate bone on the right knee, both ankles, shoulder, thumb, broken kneecap on the left side on top of the ACL. I was just like, this is not the career for me. My body's telling me that I'm not built for this long term.
Let's face it, at that time in your career as well, like it's going to really drastically affect your earning potential. Do you know what I mean? So you can see why you'd sort of like go, well, this is like, if you've already signed a contract that says you're going to be earning hundreds of thousands a year, when you get those injuries, then there's a bit more incentive to come back from them, isn't there? And it does make a difference. And like, if you're like, I'm going back to play for England, then again, like, you probably come back from those injuries. If they happen 12 months, 18 months later, it might have been a different story. But like, again, it's quite interesting, because I knew you had a lot of injuries that pushed you on to doing what you're doing now, basically. but I didn't realise that it was so close to being how close you was to being at the higher level of the sport. Do you know what I mean?
To be honest, mate, it's even closer than that. So I'd come back from all of these injuries at about the age of 18 or just about turning 18. I was approached with a professional contract and sale. But this is about just after 2005 when they'd won the Guinness Premiership. And there's a chap at the helm called Philippe Saint-André who essentially his ethos was that he only cared about the first team. There was nothing about the academy team. There was nothing about progression or longevity to the club. He just wanted to spend money on the first team. So we when it came down to funds for us, it was next to nothing. All our kit was hand-me-down stuff. Like I've been speaking to Ben recently, Ben Hart, obviously a member of the gym, about his lad who's now on the books at Manchester United and bits and bobs. He's only a young lad.
Yeah.
There's loads of them around and about that are getting that, and yet his first training session there, he rocked up and there were 3 bags of kit for him.
Yeah.
All lined up. None of it branded, but 3 bags of Man United kit. So whether he makes it or not, from that perspective, he has had that lovely moment of going into the changing room, putting on all the kit. He gets to keep that for the rest of his life. No one can take that away from him. Whereas in all my sales sharps, kit's got someone else's initials on it.
Yeah.
I was given when I was like, I've got pictures, but I used to be tiny in comparison. I was on 2-a-day weight sessions just trying to bulk up and stuff like that. Having to do extras. So they give me the kit from the first team, and it used to look like dressing gowns on me and stuff like that when you're going out to sort of train and play. It was the wrong mentality. But anyway, so they offered me a professional contract at the age of 18, and I'd obviously gone through the pain of recovering from some of these injuries. The long stints where you just doing physio at home on your own, or going into the gym when the rest of the lads outside training, or have gone away on field trips to go and do something somewhere else. And you're in the gym on your own with the physio. And it wasn't pleasant, because every time that you met the coaches, it wasn't how are you, how are you getting on, are you coping okay, is there anything we can help you out with. It was very much where's he at, when's he going to be back fit and playing again, and you became a commodity for them, as opposed to it being something personal and you having that experience. You didn't feel well looked after. But I mean, ultimately, I know they're a business, but even still.
No, yeah.
So I sat down when I got offered this contract with my mum, and one of the big turning points for me was that Phil Lex, the guy I was telling you about, the coach that signed me up, his son had gone through exactly the same process as me. But he was 26 when I was 18 and just been offered the contract. And he had been put on the same contract that I'd been offered, and he was still holding tackle pads for the first team at the age of 26.
Yeah.
And his basic salary for the year was 8,000, and he got playing bonuses on top of that. But if you weren't playing, you only got your basic salary. You didn't get any additional. So he was 26 years old on 8 grand, living at home with his mum and dad, holding tackle pads for the first team. And I was just like, this is not for me. Yeah. My granddad sat me down again. This is before he passed away, and he'd obviously got me into it at the start. But he just very openly just said, this is not what you've been brought into this world to do. You've got a better purpose than this. You need to rethink whether this is the right career for you. And it was at that moment I was just like, no, I need to nip this in the bud. I've had a lovely experience. It's been something that no one can ever take away from me. I was a professional rugby player. I was on the books being a number 10 for England rugby union. I didn't get to actually pull the shirt on, but I was getting there. It's something that shaped me, and it's been different, in particular for the career that I've now gone into. But this is not what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
One thing you say about it shaped you, and like you mentioned about obviously having to analyse all your games and stuff like that. And if anything, like from coaching you, I know that you are very analytical when it comes to it, and I can do X amount of handstand push-ups. I can do, you know what I mean? You can see how it has shaped you. How do you find that actually crosses over into what you do now? CrossFit, being a doctor, all the rest of it. Like, what lessons did you take from that has, like you say, shaped your career, the way you train and things now?
Good question. I think positive and negatives, to be completely honest. I think in my professional career, it certainly had a positive impact on me, because the world of medicine, the way that it is these days, is that, and Josh, your Rachel will tell you the same thing, throughout our entire career from university onwards, it's all about reflection. Everything about your appraisals and your revalidation is about you reflecting on practice experiences that you've seen, things that you've learned, how you dealt with them, how would you deal with them differently in the future. You know, and that reflective practice does have evidence to suggest that it creates better healthcare professionals. It's one of the reasons why the NHS is as fantastic as it is. And you know, I work in it, but I'll be the first to say that if it disappears, we lose a bit of identity for our country because it's something that we have completely different to anywhere else, and it is a fantastic service. When it comes down to doing things like CrossFit, I think that sometimes it can be a bit negative for me. I know that Josh will probably agree because he constantly tells me to try and switch off. Because, you know, if I've had a bad day at work, if I've had a bad week in work, I've not slept well, I sometimes don't have the ability to turn up to the gym when I've either got PT with Josh or when I've got one of the workouts and just switch off and forget that, you know, yeah, fair enough. Last week I did 5 sets of 10 handstand push-ups and they all went okay. But today he's getting me to do 4 sets of 14, so I'm thinking to myself already, that's more than I was doing last week, as opposed to just thinking, crack on with it, see what happens. So positive and negative, I think.
I'd agree with that from your training point of view. Definitely, I think sometimes it can be a real advantage and it can be a really good weapon to have in your arsenal. The fact that you've got all this data on yourself, and like, because obviously it's just another way of measuring progression.
Yeah.
Same time as saying that though, if you've not had a great day, week, or whatever, you're a little bit flat, and the only intent of that workout today is for you to push to a certain percentage. After that workout, you can immediately analyze what you've done and go, like you just said, well, that wasn't as good as my best could have been 2 weeks ago, or that's not as many reps I've done before, or so on and so forth. So I agree with you. I think there's definitely two sides to it. And as long as you spend more time focusing on the positive side of it, obviously it will be a positive.
Yeah.
To be fair as well, I don't think like I'm anywhere near as analytical as Paul. But I am I'm the same. I've got that much data on myself that I sometimes look back and go, like yesterday I did some rowing intervals and I was like, oh, I only rowed a 146 for 6k of over 3 kilometer intervals, and I was kind of like, well, I did that for 10k like 8 months ago.
I would like to point out them intervals were fucking horrendous that you did.
They were not.
Oh, you that, bro.
You get it, bro.
They were not remotely pleasant. But like that being said, like it's the benefit of having a coach, because my coach is always telling me, and he works with some higher level athletes as well, so like games level athletes and stuff like that. And like he's always reminding me that yes, you learn from it, but then you move on from it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that separates a good athlete and one of the higher level athletes is something that they notice a lot of, is that basically they have that ability to go, okay, this didn't go well today because of this, and this, and then they literally go, right, I've learned from it, and what's next? And it's something that I'm always trying to work on. Like I say, like my initial reaction yesterday was disappointment. And then I sort of looked back and was like, no, I'm all right. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, like that. Like when I last rode that, I had people stood around me in the gym saying, what are you doing? Oh, fucking hell, like let's get after it. You know what I mean? And cheering me on. And even like Greg Glassman always says, men will die for points. And like I'll die for an extra second off that after that 1,000 meter split on the rower.
Who says that about the dog as well?
Greg Glassman.
If the dog comes over and looks at your rowing screen, you will pull a faster split.
And that's how I was.
Are we going back onto Phil's laptop being served?
All dogs. No, yeah, it's definitely like, but it is important that like I say, you've got to be able to have that skill of reflection, but then there's another skill to come with it that, and again, cultivating that, trying to work on that is something that's important for, I think, everybody who wants to progress to any sort of level at CrossFit. So no, that's pretty cool. So going on from your rugby career, which I'm sure we could dive a bit deeper in, and maybe we'll have time to another time. But how did you go from there to being a doctor? Because you are currently a doctor within the NHS, and
yeah, I am unfortunately the NHS.
Still not to us.
To be honest, pal. So I'd like to say that I fell on it more than anything else. Like the majority of my peers, and I mean by majority, I mean you're talking 99% or so of people that have gone into being a doctor or a nurse. It's what they've wanted to do from being in their mid-teens to probably even before that. It's always been something that I never thought I would be able to do. Reason being, and warning cheesy alert, but my old man is a real inspiration to me. A real inspiration. He's currently a consultant gastroenterologist working at Wiston Hospital. He has been for about 30 years or so. But he is very well known in the local region and only for positive things. You know, I've never met anybody that has had anything negative to say about him. That was before they even realised that I was related to him. He, you know, from porters all the way down to other senior consultants, the chief exec, he'll know pretty much every one of their names. They'll know who he is. He'll be able to stop and have a conversation with them and know exactly what's going on in their lives. And it's a real quality that I've tried to instill in my own career. But he's beyond intelligent. His comprehension of anything around him is exemplary. He can just learn things like that. You know, from my sisters, one of them's done classics, one of them's done design. He's helped them with coursework for both, and he's been able to completely understand what they've done. So I used to look at medicine as being something that you had to be that level of intellect to be able to achieve. And I never saw that I was able to do that. I also thought to myself, you know, I'm physical. I'm good at sports. That's what I'm good at. I'm not that clever. I don't like books.
I play rugby.
Yeah. Where's the wall? I'll run it. He basically, you know, whilst we're going through this thing that we were just talking about before about the professional contract being batted backwards and forwards, you know, I put that on hold for a period of time because it's not a small decision. It wasn't going to be one that I made overnight completely. And we sat down with mum and dad, and it was basically, you know, what do you want to do in the future? What interests you? What do you think you would be good at? What skills have you got so far that are transferable that would be able to mean that you'd be able to succeed in what you wanted to do? And I sort of said to him, well, you know, is there any way that I can get into medicine? I've spent that much time in hospital with injuries at the minute. It started to interest me, and I thought I might as well get paid for being here because I'm, you know, I'm here all the time anyway. But I was amazed at some of the things that they could do in the hospital. And every time I'd been in there for an operation or for a scan or for physio or whatever, everyone was just so nice. It just seemed like a lovely environment to work in. The teams always pulled together. So I thought, well, you know, why not give it a go? So Dad, because he's always been involved in education, he's won awards for it. He was a postgraduate dean of medical education in the local region and has only just recently given that up. He basically searched around and about, and there was an access course run out of Carmel College, which was for people that had either done another degree or that hadn't done A-levels that wanted to get into either dentistry or medicine. It's now expanded to people that want to do veterinary as well. Right. And you essentially do A-levels in the space of about 21, 22 weeks. It's really compact and condensed, and it was probably one of the most challenging times of my life in terms of academia. But if you succeeded at that and you got, I think it was about 70% average overall, which equates to about 4 A's at A-level, you got a place directly into your respective school, so either dentistry, medicine, or veterinary the year after. So I thought, well, do you know what, we'll give it a go. So did that and managed to get through. So then started off at Liverpool University and went into it that way. So like I said, it was more that I fell on it as opposed to me sort of sitting there and being like, I want to be a doctor.
No, it's interesting that that's the way you come to it though, because again, like you say, like most people that you speak to that wanted to be a doctor or like you say, a vet or like those sort of careers, generally they've gone, right, I want to do this from the age of 14, and that's how they progress onto it. But it's interesting that it's interesting for some people probably to see that there is different career paths into it, because I'm sure there's lots of people out there that sort of go, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 12 to 14, 15, 16, 26. Do you know what I mean? And it'd be interesting for people to be able to go, oh, right, there is another, you don't have to be prepared to do that from the age of 10 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's really good for people to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to people along my own career path that have then ended up doing full 180s and going into it. You know, people from similar professions that have thought they never could do. So there's been a couple of paramedics that I've known that have managed to get into it. I think the oldest one was 41 years old, and he's now currently training as a doctor, or is probably qualified now. So I actually think that one of the things that medicine's lacked for quite a few years is people with interpersonal skills, in the respect that it's all well and good people being able to, go and cream exams and walk away with 5 A's at A level and getting 100% on the tests and so on and so forth. But does that transcribe through to them being a good doctor? The answer is no, it's not, and ultimately the wider perspective of people that we can get into healthcare that are actually dedicated and want to work about it, the better healthcare system we create. So if anybody is interested in wanting to get onto it, it's something that I really advocate that they should have a look at and go for.
I suppose in your industry, it's quite unique in a sense because like stereotyping now that you'd say that the students that are getting the full marks, the 10 A stars or whatever, you wouldn't normally say that they're the people that are the social people. Yeah. You're very quiet, study a lot, really kind of sort of academic and brainy people, but they're not your social people, are they? And I suppose in an industry like yours, you need both in theory, don't you? But what you're saying is like really good to hear, the fact that, well, you don't necessarily need to start with that. Like, you don't need to be a genius to start, do you?
I'll have to admit, outside of my job, my general knowledge is actually more general ignorance.
Yeah.
It's learned intellect as opposed to it being natural intellect.
Yeah.
And I think that the point being is that if anyone was wanting to give it a go and went for it, as long as you were dedicated enough and put in the hours, it's completely achievable. And actually having that wider aspect of skill sets, things like I'm more than happy to be in an emergency situation for patients. It's, if you want to talk about it, if we get the time, we can go more and more about the ins and outs of the career path that I've taken over the last 5 years of work.
Yeah.
But I would back myself in an emergency situation more than I would do an A-star student that's come through one of the Oxbridge universities on the majority of cases, because I know full well people that have been at that level of intellect that do nothing but panic.
Yeah.
And that we need those in medicine as well, because we need extremely clever people to sit there in clinics or whatever. And, it has a role in different aspects of it. But for people that are sat there going, oh, look, I'd love to get involved. I like being hands-on, but I just don't think I'm clever enough to do it. I completely disagree. Anybody is clever enough to do it. You just need to work at it.
Well, like Rach, my wife, you guys know what she's like. Do you know what I mean? Like you just said, an emergency situation, I would back her 100%. But at the same time as saying that, she pronounces Mange 2 as Mango Toot. Yeah.
What was the pub quiz? It was something about, she thought that we all shared the same moon. That was it. Like,
yeah, that's it, yeah.
Every
but
planet.
Why is it that all the planets in our solar system, they share the same sun, but we don't all share the same moon?
I was like, wow, excellent.
I
was like, you're taking care of people. But no, just to take it back, actually, just to sort of summarize your story, I think it's really interesting how you've sort of progressed, because the dissatisfaction that you had within the team sport was generally around that it wasn't people driven. Do you know what I mean? And then you move on to being a doctor, where now you're able to, again, in probably an industry full of maybe people that aren't people driven, you're working with people and actually able to, like I say, make a difference by being a bit more people centric, which is kind of what we talk about a lot with coaching and So I think that's quite interesting how that's progressed, and I don't know whether it's something you naturally realise when you probably look back at your own sort of like, oh well, I did this and then you are definitely one of the characters within the gym that you're always happy to talk to people. You always got time to have a sit and have a chat with people and help people out, which I think sort of summarises you really nicely.
Really nice way of saying that, Rugby. I feel like I respect you for that. Thank you very much. You thought long and hard about that.
It was considering the things I usually say to you.
Dr. Fat Dad.
Fat Mac. But to be fair, I was actually, one of my questions is, obviously I have a very unique coaching style for you, which you're well aware of. But instead, like with most people, I would be very encouraging. But I prefer to just tell you that you can't do something, and then you can go ahead and prove me wrong. Because I feel like that gets you better results. If I was to turn around to you and kiss your ass and say, Paul, you know what, you're going to be doing this workout, why don't you go and smash it? You'd probably be like, fuck off. As if I tell you you're going to be shit, you'll go ahead and do your best to prove me wrong. Do you think it's from your rugby career, you just innate, like, fuck you, I'd rather prove you wrong than anything else, that makes you be like that? Or is it more, I don't know, is it just, like I say, is it innate ability, or is it something that you've garnered over time that you just like that's the way you prefer to be taught as such?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting because everyone has a different type of personality. People talk about, like, type A, type B personalities and so on and so forth. For me in particular, going through the ranks when I was playing rugby, it was very much sell yourself kind of business. In the fact that the lads that used to speak the loudest and that were, as bold as brash were the ones that used to get picked a lot of the time. And I was never like that. I was always a little bit quiet and reserved because I felt like I didn't deserve to be there. It was more like it was a privilege that that I had to thank them for being there, as opposed to being that I was there because I deserved to be there. And I think towards the end of the career, from that point of view, I then got into the mindset that I will actually, if I'm here, I might as well show them that I deserve to be here. And that's when I started to think to myself, well, actually, the only way I can do that is by excelling and proving to people that, I can do this, that I am at the level that I think that I am. And I think I've taken that mentality through both into medicine. Like I was saying before, I know that I am not a straight A student. I know that I go into my exams, I've done it through med school as well, literally shitting a brick that, this could go one way or the other. And I've had lots of knockbacks. First year medical school, failed one of the exams, spent my summer revising again to repeat that.
Yeah.
My first year of practicing as a doctor, I sat what's called the MRCP Part 1, which is become a member of the Royal College of Physicians, the 3-part exam, and failed that, despite the fact that I'd worked for months to do it, whereas my 2 housemates at the time had only revised for a couple of weeks and both aced it. So I think that when it comes down to CrossFit, I've got a very similar mentality that it makes me drive more when someone tells me that I'm not able to do something, because, like you say, it's very much right, well, I want to prove to you that I can, and not only prove to you, but prove to me that I'm able to do it. And then once I've done it, I get a greater sense of achievement, and it actually drives me on to want to do better again the next time. Than if someone was to sit there and say to me, oh, well, which of course talked about before with Josh, clean today, 3 singles at 120. Oh, you've done that before, it'll be fine. Well, not necessarily, because we're in a completely different circumstance to us training normally at the gym, where we're doing this on a repeated basis. So it's like, well, this is my aim for the day. I've got to get it done. When you've done it, you then stand proud and you're like, well, actually, yeah, I've done that. I've nailed that. I can move on again next week. Let's push on. And I think you're right. Every time you've given me a bit of bait, so to speak, I've probably exceeded more in the gym than normal.
Yeah, no, like you definitely do. It's, to be honest, like it makes it enjoyable for me to coach you, because it's one of them. You can have a bit of fun with it, and we can always have a bit of banter back and two about it afterwards. So, like I say, for me personally, coaching you, I like to be able to. We talk a lot on the podcast about coaching individuals and not coaching like groups as such. I think that's one of that. It's very evident with you that you can see that that's different when probably both me, Josh, or anyone else coaches you. You don't necessarily be like, you want to know facts. You want to know, do this and do it like this. Not necessarily. You don't need the shit sandwich as such, like a lot of people. Yeah.
Do this. Okay.
Yeah. And we're all like people like that. So we're gonna move on to the final 3 sort of fun questions to finish up with. I'm sure there's a lot more to dive into. But I obviously don't want the podcast to be 4 hours long. We're not Joe Rogan yet. So First question is always one that I like to do is book or film recommendation that you think everybody should watch or read.
So as aforementioned, I'm not much in the way of a reader. So unless you want a medical textbook or the Mr. Men series, it's probably not really worth me talking about that. I've not really read a book in a long time. Having said which, when it comes down to the whole lockdown thing and what we were just talking before about, I know my mindset when it comes down to the gym has been something that's always probably let me down a little bit. And it's something I've tried to work on recently, understanding of a few of the elements, how many RPM should I be keeping the bike out for this workout. So I have ordered a few books online for CrossFit to be able to sit and read. So I might be able to give some recommendations in a few months' time. So we'll go for film instead. So film is definitely Remember the Titans.
We watched that recently. Yeah,
absolutely epic film. I was in love with that at university. I used to watch it every night before a rugby game. Don't know why, but it just used to get me pumped up. Loved it. So yeah, if you've never seen that, definitely get on that.
Yeah, 100%. I'd recommend that one as well. It's great. We actually watched it. I made Emma watch it recently because I was like, "This is one of the films on the you must watch this list."
She cried.
She didn't, surprisingly. Emma cries walking up the stairs. So, right, okay. So, obviously, you played sport to a high level. If you hadn't have played rugby, what sport would you have chosen? If you'd have had
that'd be really boring.
Yeah.
I wish in 2007 when CrossFit started in a lad at school called Carl Morton had started doing it at L1, I think it is, or Liverpool 1, the place that's I think it's a boxing gym at the same time, but they started doing CrossFit back then.
Right.
He tried to get me to go and do it with him at that time, and I was very much like, kipping, that's bollocks, that's just cheating, it's giving you extra this, that, and the other. Well, how much can you bench? How much can you deadlift? I wish I'd taken it up back then, because if I'd have probably paid a bit more attention to it prior to all of my injuries from rugby, I think I would probably be better at it now and probably be a different body shape, and I would probably get more gains from it. So yeah, I think I would have liked to have done CrossFit from that age, as opposed to rugby.
Good answer.
Good answer. You definitely won't make more money doing CrossFit though. That's not how.
I don't know. Fraser's not short of a Bob or two, is he? Let's be honest.
I mean,
you knock him off his pedestal. Why not me?
By all means, bro. Prove me wrong. So I like it. CrossFit again. I think for people who get to a certain age and have played a lot of sports, it'd be ideal. You know what I mean? Maybe not necessarily I don't think anybody should focus on CrossFit from an early age.
No.
But I think from probably the age of 18 onwards, if you've got a good base of sport behind you, then yeah, CrossFit's a great avenue to go down at the minute. So 2 more questions. What's the best swear word? Go.
To be fair, I say it in pretty much every other sentence, but I'm a bit like Billy Connolly. There's no better swear word than fuck.
I like fuck.
It just is. It comes off the tongue so well. It fits in most sentences. It just adds a little bit of drama. I mean, I know that Nats is a little bit more into it than that, shall we say? But
I used it as a comma. That's why.
By the way, I was watching her podcast the other day, and I absolutely loved the first time that she said it, because you could see the sense of realization on her face, where she was just a bit like, well, literally, fuck. I've just said that. So yeah, fuck.
Love it.
We didn't even tell her not to swear. We just told her not to be as nat as she normally is.
You should have just let her loose. Bring her back and just let her loose.
Just let her go.
I feel like the world's not ready for that.
No, it definitely is. I reckon if we just record her and Wardy just going backwards and forwards, perfect.
I feel like it'd be just like Fantasy Snap. It'd just be like one of them wouldn't come out of the other end.
Well, we all know that would be Wardy.
Okay, last one. Throw an extra one at you. In a film about your life, who would you like to see play you, other than you?
Other than me, I guess the boring answer is obviously going to be Patrick Bell, isn't it? Because that's how everyone says I fucking look like.
I said like Val Kilmer or someone like that.
Do you know what? I was generally thinking about this today after watching a couple of other people on podcasts. By the way, some have been fantastic. I really enjoyed Phil's one the other day.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I had a lot of time for some of the things that he was talking about on there. I would say I think it would be interesting to get Ryan Reynolds, just because of the way that he plays Deadpool. I think that he would be able to verbalise some of my internal dialogue pretty well. I think that there would be a little bit of comedy value to it. And I mean, let's be honest, like he's an all right looking lad, but he's not a great looking lad, is he? So, you know, I'd like to say that I would fit in that category as well.
I feel like you need to go on a bit of a bulking cycle, but other than that,
it's all right, mate. He can have what he wants. Bit of roids, there we go, leave it.
Right. Awesome, mate. That was brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on today. Really enjoyed it. And like I say, and as always, I think that like there's probably a lot more that we could dive into. So I hope maybe another time. Obviously, thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Obviously, if you enjoyed this episode, like Big Mac said, Pillion's episode that was recently aired is another good one that I think would be very much down a similar vein. So jump on that. I think that's episode 13. Obviously, the way we get these podcasts out there for people to enjoy and learn from is joining words and that Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and obviously giving us a 5-star review on iTunes would be super helpful. Big Mac, is there anything, if anybody does want to get in touch with you, I know you're always helpful with people at the gym who want to know more about becoming a doctor, or I know we've had people that do like nursing and things like that. If anybody can get in contact with you if they're interested in knowing a bit more?
Not a problem, mate. I mean, you're challenging me here because I don't know my own social media stuff very well. But obviously, Facebook, they can get in touch with me and send me a message via Messenger. If I don't get back to it, I'm sorry about that, but I'll try my best. And then obviously, I know that some people prefer to message via Instagram. Mine's just JP McLindon. I'm sure Phil's got them if he wants them this time.
I thought it was at Mac Daddy. Is that someone else I've been messaging?
Mate, that's someone else that you've been following and sending messages to. You know, if you're getting pictures back from that and they're a bit personal, they're not me. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, damn it.
Wasn't that just what Bert called him?
Yeah.
I was waiting for that.
Right. Awesome. Again, thank you very much, Paul. Again, guys, please like, share, comment, review. Help us get the podcast out there. We really appreciate it. And thank you very much. Peace.